Good evening, everyone. Please confirm if you can hear me. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, good
Good
evening.
evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Adefe. Good evening, Elsie. Good evening, Jane. Good evening, Michael. Good evening, Mrs. Omobola. Good evening, Peculiar. Good evening, Precious. Good evening to everyone that is currently on call. My name is Dennis Williams, and I am your moderator for today, and I will be your moderator for today. Welcome to the officially the last class for Q4 2023 mentorship program, Jiipcc mentorship program. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey. I'm sure it must have been an incredible journey so far for every single mentee here on call. We've gone through series of phases of classes from our different in our different courses: intellectual property, artificial intelligence and law, entertainment business and law, data privacy and protection, health tech and law, artificial intelligence, and just the host of courses, the other courses we have. I'm sure you guys have learned a lot. You've had the opportunity to mix and interact with other mentees. You've learned from your mentors, you've interacted with them, and we are almost drawing the curtain, right, on the program. So this is going to be our last class for this is going to be our last class for this quarter, and I'm expecting for us to have a very full class, right? So please, mentees down call, please, you can go back to the groups and tell your fellow mentees that class has officially started and we are expecting a full class. One of our mentors is already on call and will soon be entering straight into the section. So without further ado, I will just go straight to take the announcements and then we'll go into today's class. So first announcement for today is that registration for Q1 2024 is already ongoing. We shared the flyers with you. We expect you guys to post, share it on your social media, spread the word, let everyone know that Jiipcc first quarter 2024 registration is ongoing. So please, if you can, reach out to friends, reach out to family, reach out to colleagues that we have started registration for the first quarter of 2024. Secondly, private mentorship slots are still available for those that are interested in having a private mentorship section with your favorite mentor. Please, you can reach out to me and then I will direct you as likewise on how you are supposed to go about it. So thank you about that. And last but not least, on our announcements for today, we'd like to say thank you to the mentees that have posted their videos, on their various social media networks, social media handles, and we encourage those that haven't done so to please do that. Please make sure you spread the Jiipcc word, the Jiipcc good news in that sense on your social media. Please let's loud it. So we expect more response from more mentees showing, sending their videos in and telling us that they appreciate what Jiipcc has done for them. All right, so that's our last announcement for today. Okay, yes, and before I forget, I want to remind every mentee that is on call that you should not forget to fill in the form, the link that was sent to you for your certificates. Please make sure you fill that form. Right, we don't want a scenario where you don't get your certificates because you didn't fill that form. So if you haven't filled the form, please go back to the group and search for the message where the link was attached to, and then make sure you do that. All right, so we'll just be going straight to introducing our mentors and reading their profile. We are supposed to have 4 mentors on call today, and our first mentor for today is Ms. Teniola Tayo. Ms. Teniola Tayo is a policy advisor with a focus on trade, investment, regional integration, and development issues in Nigeria and Africa. She has a master's degree in development management from the London School of Economics and a first degree from the University of Ghana. She is the principal advisor at Alonet Advisors with a wealth of experience in her field. Teniola has previously worked as a consultant with organizations such as Institute of Security Studies, Supply Chain Africa, Africa Policy Research Institute, the United Nations Development Programme, and the Inter-American Development Bank. She has also worked as a senior legislative aide with the Nigerian Senate and a consultant with the Office of the Vice President. She is based in Abuja and she is a Chivanin scholar with a with a fellow of the European University Institute School of Transactional Governance and the London School of Economics Program for Africa Leadership. Welcome, Ms. Teniola. Thank you for being here with us. We'll be going to our second mentor for today, the profile of our second mentor for today, and that is Ms. Omobola Adekola. Omobola is the managing partner of Champion and Broily Solicitors and the founder of TWB Trade Advisory Limited. She has extensive experience in handling corporate and commercial transactions, having provided transactional advisory service to a diverse range of clients over the years. She advises institutes on corporate structure of business, cross-border investments, international trade, corporate governance best practice, and legal intricacies of financial matters. She is the founder and the host of the Trade Without Borders podcast, a podcast African Continental Free Trade Area. On the African Continental Free Trade Area, Omobola was part of a team of corporate governance compliance professionals that advise the Nigerian government on policy frameworks for private sector's implementation on the National Ethics and Integration Policy 2020. She is a member of the Executive Committee of the Young Directors Forum, YDF, of the Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria. She served as a faculty and volunteer legal consultant of Faith Foundation. Omobola is a graduate of the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria, and was called to the Nigerian bar in 2007. She holds a postgraduate degree in international trade and commercial law, Durham University, United Kingdoms. In her spare time, Omobola partakes in charitable activities. Welcome, Ms. Omobola. Thank you for joining us. Our third mentor for today will be Mr. Leonard Otunye Ubaja. Mr. Leonard Otunye Ubaja is a legal practitioner with expertise in trade laws and policies, competition and consumer protection, investments, climate change, private sector development. He is a founder and executive director of Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy Limited, CBTA. He is also the principal consultant at TBE Advisory Limited. Welcome, Mr. Leonard. Thank you for joining us. And our last but not least on the list of mentors for today is Mr. Tenatiwa Dambuza. Tenatiwa Dambuza is a passionate monitoring and evaluation expert with a demonstrated history of working with medial international trade and development industry. He has a master's degree in international trade and diplomacy and a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Zimbabwe. He has a certificate in advanced radio from which university. He is a co-founder of the Zimbabwe Institute of African. He is a co-founder of the Zimbabwe Institute of African Integration, a platform that aims to promote and support the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area in Zimbabwe and beyond. He is a graduate research assistant at Clean Consultancy, where he conducts and supports research on various aspects of trade and development. Previously, he worked as a research associate at Zimbabwe Cross-Border Trade Association and as a call center agent as Econet Wireless Zimbabwe. He has skills and knowledge in diplomacy, international trade, marketing, brand awareness, political science, media development, freedom of expression, media literacy, media diversity, media sustainability and media advocacy. He is also an enthusiastic advocate for the AfCFTA and its potential to revolutionize intra-African trade and development. He attended the AfCFTA Business Forum 2023 in Cape Town and learned a lot about the AfCFTA from various stakeholders and experts. He has also published several articles on AfCFTA related topics on Business Times Zimbabwe, Global South opportunities, and other platforms where he shares his insights and opinion on AfCFTA. That's our final mentor for today, and we'll just be going straight into the business of today. I can see Miss Omobola is already here with us on call. I'm sure our mentees are a little bit thrown aback on the topic for today, AfCFTA's African Continental Free Trade Area. And we have our mentors here to help us do due justice to the topic for today. I hope the group presenters for today are ready. Please, we'll be having our first mentor for today to come and give us an introduction into the topic for today. Welcome, Ms. Omobola. Thank you for joining us, ma. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dennis. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite. And do you want me to start now? Hi, Chanatsu. I'm not sure if Teniola too tired. So you are in good hands. You have good AfCFTA experts. Should I call them with you this afternoon? So I'm sure you're here for a fantastic learning experience. So, well, when I saw the presentation by the mentors, I was like, oh, you've done some of my work already. So it seems like, because I wasn't sure if some of the people are familiar with the AfCFTA anyway, or they really know so much. So what I'll do is, since we have 4 other mentors, let me just, I will speak to, I'll do some introduction about the AfCFTA, just a bit of it before we move into intellectual property. Dennis, can you confirm if that, because you just gave me a broad topic anyway. So that's what Dennis, is that fine? I don't know, do people here know about the AfCFTA, or do you want me to go into introduction about it, or do you want me to share slides as well, if that's fine?
Yes, ma, you can go ahead and share your slides, ma. Currently, okay. You're the only mentor on call, so while we wait for other mentors to join, please, we'll just like to delve the topic a bit.
Oh, okay, fantastic. All right, okay. Oh, sorry, I think I'm sharing the wrong. Am I sharing the wrong slide? Sorry. Okay, I don't know, for some reason that closed up. Let me just open it back again. Apologies for this. Oh, wow. For some reason, the slide has just gone off. I don't know why that's okay. Just Okay, if that's not coming up, I guess I'm just going to have to speak to that directly, whatever it is, I don't know.
Whatever the case may be, I'm sure
Yeah,
everyone has.
that's fine. So that's fine. I will. I don't know why that isn't coming up, but I'll just okay, please just give me a okay. I have an alternative one, so I'll just use that. The main one has gone up. I don't know. Right. Okay, so I don't know if so I do not waste everyone's time. If anyone has heard about the AF, okay, yes, I'm sure we have all heard about the AfCFTA, and it's okay, good. I can share my screen now. Fantastic. Okay, I don't know, maybe it does. Okay, let me just speak out. I've actually preferred to share my slides so everyone is able to follow through, but for some reason, it keeps jumping off. I don't know why that is not allowing me to do that.
All right, so please, Mark, can we also request that if it's possible, right,
Can I
Mark?
share with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, let me see what's going to happen. Okay, maybe I will share it with you then, so you can move. I think that way you can easily work with it. Okay. Okay, so I don't know. Wait, so I'll just share the slides now with Dennis, and we will continue with that. So basically, I'm sure a lot of us have been hearing the AfCFTA, and they're wondering what that is really.
Okay, while we wait for our mentor to join us back, and I'm so sure she had some emergency. So please, can we just go ahead and reach out to still other mentees to join us on call, right? Class is still a bit scanty, so please make sure you reach out to your fellow mentees to join in on the call so that we have a full class.
Okay, sorry, let me just go on. Maybe I'll share the slides with Dennis. So what is the AfCFTA? It's basically the African Continental Free Trade Area, and it's a project of the AU, the African Union. So in March 2018, the agreement was signed in Kigali at the 10th summit of the AU Assembly. Then in 2019, 30th of May, it became effective. And as at now, we have about 54 African countries. Yes, 54 out of the 55 African countries have signed it, and about 47 have ratified it. So what is the objective of the FCA to really? It's basically to promote intra-African trade, that get Africans to create a single market for Africans within the 54 African countries, which is going to be facilitated by the free movement of goods, free movement of services, and free movement of persons, and that's by removing or reducing barriers to trade, really. So that's what it is, and of course, it's projected that by 2030, 1.7 billion people, a growth projection of create a single market with a growth projection of 1.7 billion people and 6.7 trillion in consumer and business spending by 2030. So that's from World Economic. They just thought to share that. And so it just vast opportunities to enter and expand into new markets across Africa. So there is an agreement. The African, what's a free trade area, just to really so that we have a fair idea, because a lot of people still don't know what a free trade area is. Just basically like a region where like group of countries within a region, they come together and say, oh, let's all trade together. Let's remove, let's create a single market. Let's remove the barriers. There are barriers, there are tariff barriers, there are non-tariff barriers that are hindering us from trading with each other. So that's basically what it is. You find out that from data and statistics, Africans trade more with outsiders. We trade more with Chinese. We trade more with other foreign countries than within Africa. So African governments have come together to say, let's create a single market within the 54 African countries, and let's remove all the barriers that are hindering us. And so let's create rules and policy that is going to guide that single market. So you have an opportunity to trade across East Africa, West Africa, North Africa, Southern Africa. And so that is what the AfCFTA is about in basic terms. So then when you now say, sorry, can anyone see my slides now? I think I've been able to get the slides. Can you, Dennis, yes, can you confirm? Okay, fantastic. Okay, yes, so I'll just run off to move it up. Okay, so I've spoken about this first opportunity. So what is the agreement? Under the AfCFTA, there's an agreement that all the 54 African countries signed. We have the trade in goods protocol, the protocol on trade in goods, protocol on trade and services, the intellectual property rights protection. Then we have the protocol on investment, the competition policy protocol. There's a protocol on dispute resolution. Then there's protocol on digital trade and women and youths. So those are so that's the way the AfCFTA is spread. So there's trade in goods, trade in services, intellectual property, competition policy, investments, and the rest of. So we'll move on to the trade what the protocol on intellectual property is, what it wants to do. It's basically that to establish harmonized rules and principles for the promotion, protection, cooperation and enforcement of intellectual property rights. So that is one of the objectives of the protocol on intellectual property. But like I always say, intellectual property does not operate in silos. It's going to fall under any of some of the, like you're trading in goods. How do you protect it for people that are going to trade in goods? Some of us are already trading in services. How do you protect the intellectual property under the four modes of supplying services? We have them under four modes. We have the cross-border supply. That's when you offer your services. Somebody from Kenya reaches out to you in Nigeria, and you offer services over the internet, and you send information. You don't need to say, so payment is made, you send the information, whether by email or by phone and all. That's cross-border supply. Then we also have different presence of natural persons. You can go in as an expert to give a training in another African. You go to Morocco from Ghana to go and give a training, and you are paid. Or another one is commercial presence, which a lot of us can testify to that. The banks, they are spreading across. We have branches in various countries. You set up a branch of your company in another African country. Then the final one is when you come here, you go to Kenya, and that's from Cote d'Ivoire. You use their hotels or hospitals or their tourist services there. So that is how you supply services. So I'm sure we're already putting our minds to ways that we are providing services and how intellectual property can. So what are the specific objectives? So I've also highlighted it here. So when I said the other time, when I saw the presentation, I was like, you people have already done half of my work, you know. You put all the there. So what does the IP protocol seeks to achieve to support intra-African data, to promote us trading with each other more, get Africans to also trade with each other, within them, amongst each other. Then, of course, promote African innovation, creativity, deepen IP culture in Africa. Then I'm sure we all agree there's a lot of innovation and technological emerging techs and the rest coming up. Promote coherent intellectual property rights policy. Let's try to achieve as much uniform in our intellectual property policy within Africa. So that's another thing. Then encourage African negotiation positions on intellectual property rights. So globally, Africans should also be able to come under the trade and say, oh, this is what we think, this is what we think. Access knowledge, contribute to promotion of science, and the services, investment, trade, and the harmonized system of intellectual property protection. Then support and promote the creative and cultural industries. And I'm sure a lot of us are probably here by setting up a legal framework while securing and giving incentive and public health needs and priorities of state parties. So what is the scope of the protocol? There's a scope. What categories of IP applies under the protocol? So we have this protecting the plant variety protection, geographical indications. I'm sure some of them marks, whatever marks we use for our products or services that you want to be identified with, whether it's a sign, you can at least put in your mind to some of the various brands that we know, telecommunication, even sports brand, wear outfits and the rest. When you see their mark, you already know. If you see a Nike sign, you already know that this is the Nike product. If you see even some other, some people identify maybe colors and you know their logos. If you see Z for Nigeria, you know Zenith Bank, you know all the, so their marks and patents, utility models, industrial designs. And what is it also seeking to protect? Undisclosed information, trade secrets. Some of us have our businesses that we do. We have information that we don't want to release that should not be out there. You are looking for ways to protect those informations. Layout, designs, topography, and copyright and related rights, traditional knowledge. So it also goes from, it's not just protecting our usual that we know for traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, emerging technology, genetic resources, and other emerging issues. So this is the scope of the intellectual property protection protocol. This is what it's going to was focusing on. So what are the standards? It also creates standards, really. So what sort of standards will the protection fall under? So how do you protect new plant varieties? So it's already stating that state parties shall provide protection for new plant varieties through a sui generis system. That's a unique and legal identity on its own that includes farmers' right, plant breeders' right, rules on access, and they are going to make provisions for these geographical indications, protect it through additional means of protection as well, certification, mark selection, and then for marks. This is all the categories of marks that will be present. Protection for all categories of marks. Promoting marks that also promote sustainable industrial development, of course, through diversification and regional value chain development. So when we say regional value chain, so one of the objectives of AfCFTA really is to move Africa from just exporting raw materials to move us to a place where we develop value chain. Rather than we are taking cocoa out, we are also producing chocolate, rather than just take. So that is one of what AfCFTA is seeking to do, regional value chain. And of course, with that, there are going to be intellectual property issues. So what I'm trying to do, I'm also trying to draw your minds to some of the things that are going to come up. If we are going to develop our value chains in Africa, they are going to need a whole lot of things, industrialization. Intellectual property will come up a whole lot of things. There are new things, new equipment, new products, new processes that are going to come up. So this is what, and in the process, whether you have marks that are identifying your products or services or processes, that's going to be protected. Then for copyright, I'm sure a lot of us, because most of us are very familiar with the creative industries and the youths are more on this, we operate in this space a lot. So for copyright and related right, this is what's going to provide protection for copyright and related right. Then also frameworks that are going to encourage and facilitate the protection of rights, use of education, research, scientific inquiry, preservation of cultural materials, and advancements. It's going to protect, they're making provision for such, and of course, when you are coming up, when the state parties are coming up with such rights, they are meant to take into account all this. There's rapid technological development. We all know that innovation, we all know that what's going on. So all the AIs, the blockchains, and the rest of the Internet of Things and all, these are all these things that should be taken into consideration when they are coming up with the frameworks of protection. And of course, promote fair and adequate remuneration for authors and performers, which is equitably collected and distributed and to facilitate cross-border flow of educational materials. So under copyright, this is the scope of what is going to cover some of it. Then for patents, grant patent for inventions, whether for products or processes. Take your mind back and said in regional value chain that there are going to be new processes, new products, new services that will come up in all that. So patents, whether for processes, whether for products in all areas of tech, whether they are new or inventive, so make provision for that. But the protocol also makes exceptions to this rule that when your patent law should not hinder medicines, vaccines, diagnostics, and other healthcare inputs, in which is with another essential to consistent with intellectual property treaties, which we have parties. So you know that, of course, there are IP treaties that a whole lot of that we must have. You know the ones that I don't know if there are different countries, African menses, so you know the various IP treaties that the countries are signed to. So that's also taken into consideration that if you are signed on to that, then whatever states are coming up with should not affect that. Then industrial designs provide protection for industries that are new or original, designs that contribute to development of key industries and value chains. The registration of environmental friendly industrial designs. That's what it is. And I'm sure since we've been doing IP, a lot of us know what all those what that is, industrial design. Then emerging technology. They should provide measures for emerging tech through existing IP rights categories. They can either use the ones that are existing or a sui generis system to facilitate trade, promote access, and use of new for use of new and emerging tech. Basically to facilitate industrialization and development. So you can see the development of value chains, industrialization across the board. So we need to put that into consideration. And yes, I'll get back to this issue of annex later on. But one thing I must also put in, one thing that we should also put in consideration that the AfCFTA is still being negotiated across board. Negotiations are ongoing. So just like the annexes on different, some of the different areas or categories, negotiations are ongoing. And so as all this information, everything they do, begin to get more information once they've completed or once they've almost rounded up. So that's what it is. Then public health emergencies and local production of pharmaceuticals. That one allows state parties to take actions to protect essential public health interests. Then of course, coherence, that's uniform. One thing that we should do, the AfCFTA thing, like, look, let's have uniform policies on IP rights, innovation, trade, and industry. Let's have across board, let's have uniform policies, like try to promote uniform policies across board. And of course, ensure regional cooperation to provide for greater economies of scale and develop regional value chains. So, and the Act also makes provision for cooperation, how the states are to cooperate in coming up with the frameworks on protection of intellectual property. So there's a general obligation for states to cooperate on IP rights to support intra-African trade, regional value chain, industrialization, and economic growth. They have to cooperate on that. Then what are the areas of cooperation in respect of exchange of information and experiences on national and regional intellectual property? Dennis, please, when is almost please let me know so that I'm conscious of time and I can move a little bit faster, because I've realized that we are done. So in areas, cooperate in areas of exchanging information and experiences on national, and so whatever is our states, our countries with intellectual property regulations, and in respect of regional, that's ECOWAS, we have the SADC, we have the EAC, that's East African countries. So some of them have their intellectual property policies. So whatever it is, they can exchange information in respect and experiences, of course, to come up with policies. Then also to identify future intellectual property issues. We all know that everything, technology advancement, global advancement. So there are new things that are coming up that we may not have taken into consideration as that now. So, but right now, that sort of things they should be taken into consideration. Then, of course, enhance the use of open source licensing, research cooperation, collaborate in respect of university industry linkages, facilitate transfer and diffusion of tech. Then strengthen the means for copyright holders to secure a fair share of proceeds from adaptation, distribution, rental, communication to the public and other use of their commercial work. So at least no one is just using your copyright. You are able to get proceeds from the use of your copyright. That's sort of what the protocol is seeking to protect. And of course, mechanisms for that's regulators, custom officials, judicial authorities, and agencies to adapt. We all know that's going to happen anyway, even within country and all that, there are going to be infringements. So how do you then protect infringement across border within the 54 African countries? So there's a way that, so they should foster collaboration among all these authorities in respect of investigation and addressing infringement right then. Of course, studies, that's going to be part of it. Then public awareness, that's very key. If people don't know, there's no way they're going to know, oh, I have my rights to be protected. That the state should also take time to ensure that they are aware of what intellectual property rights issues and all. Then, of course, facilitate registration. If you have to register your trademark, your copyright, your patent, and all, facilitate protection on that if you're going to be within the AfCFTA, to facilitate the registration. So, enforcement of IP rights. The protocol also makes provisions for state parties to provide IP rights holder. Sorry, excuse me. To provide IP rights holder with access to legal mechanisms to enforce the IP rights. Yes, you need to provide legal mechanisms, because there is no point saying, oh, we have intellectual property and the people cannot enforce in court. So it is very key. So, yes, legal mechanism. Then, of course, the procedures for enforcement of rights should be striking of balance between the rights of holders and the rights of consumers. And of course, state parties to consider admin, tech, and financial capacity in setting up IP enforcement procedures. Then, what about provisions of the protocol makes transit trade? Border measures on enforcement shall not affect the transit trade of other state parties in accordance with protocol on trade in goods. So when you are transiting, maybe moving between one country, so whatever measures you are put down as a state party, let it not affect the IP rights on that. Then, of course, the transit countries may also implement measures to prevent diversion of goods, because you know that that's going to happen anyway. Somebody is going to want to divert, they've infringed on somebody's intellectual property right, they now divert it into another market. So states are also to come up with measures in respect of addressing that. Then state parties should also adopt enforcement procedures to enable a right holder valid grounds for the enforcement procedures should be provisions. They should make provision for all that. And I think I'll just stop here for now. That is, yes, thank you very much. So we can come up with it. So finally, just to wrap up, to let you know that so there are different annexes that are still being negotiated between the parties. So this is what the protocol has come about. Parties are still negotiating. How are we going to come up with it? What are the policies? And so, you know, as we all are stakeholders in the sector, it's also for us to we can get active, we can be involved one way or the other, but we'll stop it at that. So I'll just let the other mentors also speak concerning that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Ma. Thank you for that wonderful introduction into the topic for today. I'm sure our mentees were able to relate with most of what you said. I would like to say our mentees also react saying thank you, Ma, for that introduction. Please, Ma, we also like to request if you can still share your slide with me so that our mentees can have them. We can share them to their different groups.
Yes, I will save. So once I'm able to recover the one that because this is just the one that I kept that I used. So I'll get that for you and send that to you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. Thank you, Ma. I can see we have two mentors that also joined us on the call. We have Mr. Tanasiwa and Mr. Leonard. Welcome, sirs, and thank you also for joining us today. We would like to have Mr. Tanasiwa also come and give us his introduction into the topic of today for today. While he's going to join us, or while he's about to join us, please, can we have mentees turn on their videos so that we can be able to identify you by face, know that you people are on call, you people are listening, and you people are with us. Please, we like to ask mentees to do that. Please turn on your video camera so that we can know you are with us. Mr. Tanasiwa, please, you can come and give us your introduction into the topic for today, sir.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Hello, Dennis. How are you?
I'm very fine, sir. I can hear you, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity that you've given me today, and I'm happy to see most of the mentors, the people that I've been interacting with in different sessions, be it podcasts and everything. So it is really an honor to meet you, Mobola and Tiniola.
Thank you, Tanasiwa.
Thank you so much. So I think my topic is an interesting one because it is a case study where I'm looking at how the private sector, as well as how we can raise awareness on the AfCFTA. Dennis, if you check, I've sent you an email with my slides. I don't know if you can help me share them.
All right, sir. I will look into that right now, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So the main reason why the AfCFTA protocol on the intellectual property came into play is because there is a lack of harmonization in African intellectual property regulation. You know, we have about 2 organizations that regulates the intellectual property laws and regulations in Africa. These are the African Regional Intellectual Property Organization, which is hosted in Zimbabwe, the ARIPO, which covers about 19 countries in the Eastern and the Southern African region. And then we have the organization Africain de la Propriété Intellectuelle. I can't really read or pronounce French, but it's simply OHAPI, which covers about 17 French-speaking countries. You see, from the true organization that we have, we can clearly see that there is a division in Africa where you see French-speaking countries having their own intellectual property regulation, and countries in the Eastern and Southern Africa having their own regulations on intellectual property, which is the major problem that we are having when it comes to regional integration and the intra-African trade in Africa. We all identify ourselves with our former colonizers. We label ourselves Francophones, Anglophones, and so forth. So this is the major problem that we are having. We are not harmonized as Africa. And then if we go down from the regional to national, you realize that each and every country in Africa has its own national intellectual property office. which handle and administer the enforcement of IP laws and regulation at the national level. Hence, these divisions or lack of harmonization creates challenges in ensuring consistent protection, enforcement, and regulation of IPR across the continent. Because we do not have uniform IP regulation, this also affects the ease of doing business, innovation, and enforcement of IP rights within the African context. You see, so that is the major problem that we are facing at the moment. And we need to resolve that problem, because if they are not harmonized, the effectiveness of IP protection is hindered, which may negatively impact trade, innovation, economic growth within our own country. So if we want to promote a conducive business environment for innovation, creativity, and sustainable economic development in Africa, we need to harmonize the IP. So basically, that is what I can say is the background or the major reason why we need the AfCFTA to come as a neutralizer for these organizations that are disorganized, because they are causing a lot of problems when it comes to trade in Africa, or when it comes to regional integration in Africa. So in January 2023, the AfCFTA made public the draft protocol on intellectual property rights, which basically, like what I mentioned earlier, seeks to establish harmonized rules and principles for the promotion, protection, cooperation, and enforcement of intellectual property rights across Africa. I think most of the objectives have already been mentioned by Omobola, so I will skip that out. And the background, I think it has been spoken widely. So I think with this, let's now get into the importance of the AfCFTA IP protocol in regional integration. Number one, harmonization of intellectual property laws and regulations is going to create a cohesive and standardized approach to the protection and enforcement of IP rights across the African countries. Secondly, it is going to foster an environment which is conducive to innovation and creativity, hence encouraging the development, protection, and utilization of IP assets within the African continent. The AfCFTA draft protocol on the intellectual property has already shown that it supports economic growth by providing a framework for the effective protection of enforcement of the enforcement of intellectual property rights, thereby incentivizing investment in innovation and knowledge-based industry. It is also going to protect the rights of the creative and cultural industries that we have, that have long faced the problems of protection of their intellectual property, and have faced intellectual property theft by countries, not only within Africa, but also across the world. So it is another benefit that we are going to have, because the CCIs, they play a major role, even when it comes to the acceleration of the implementation of the AfCFTA. Like what the protocol emphasizes on. it emphasizes on IP protection, hence supporting what is known as development of regional value chains, even technology transfer and the promotion of science, industrialization, and services within the continent. I think we can go to the next slide on the collaboration for, yes, we are there. So I think we have to, now we are not looking at the Nigerian context, because basically, I think the background and the brief of the importance of IP laws or the protocol on the IP has been overemphasized on. So when it comes to now to Nigeria, which is one of the member states of the AfCFTA, of course, Nigeria, if we look at it is not one of the countries which signed the agreement or ratified rather the agreement as early as others. It had a lot of problems, especially with the labor, people involved in labor, and so forth, because they do not trust liberalization, and they were afraid of the evils that comes with liberalization. And everyone knows that Africa has already faced a lot of problems when, as long as liberalization is concerned. If we go to the ESAPs back in the 1980s and the 1990s. So I just want to see to look at how Nigeria can effectively engage in collaborative effort with other African member states to harmonize intellectual property laws and regulations across the African continent. Number one, Nigeria must participate in discussions like these, and also actively participate in the negotiations. Like Omobola has already mentioned, that there are certain annexes that have not been fully implemented or fully agreed on by the member state. Hence, the Nigerian government, the Nigerian people must take active participation in these negotiations and forums, which are mainly dedicated to harmonize the intellectual property laws and regulations across African member states. Number two, there is need for sharing best practices and experiences related to IP regulation and enforcement to facilitate mutual learning and implementation of effective IP policy, as well as aligning national intellectual property laws with regional standards and frameworks established under the African Continental Free Trade Area to ensure consistency and coherence in the IP regulations. Because remember, the national IP laws may not be the same as the African Continental Free Trade Area IP laws. So we need a framework from Nigeria and any other African countries that harmonizes the national laws with the AfCFTA laws, so that it becomes consistent. Because if there is an inconsistent, you know what happens in law. If there is even a smaller inconsistent, we can write on that. So I think Nigeria, and like any other African countries, need to come up with something that harmonizes its national IP laws with the IP protocol under the AfCFTA. Nigeria must also contribute to the development of common policy and regulations that are inclusive of the diverse intellectual property landscape within the continent. Nigeria, is a bigger country, and it's a bigger economy. It has bigger influence when it comes to the laws that affect the whole region. Hence, it must contribute to these common policies, because its voice is listened to than voices of other countries. So it must really make sure that it contributes effectively. And then also, let's engage in capacity building program that are aimed at enhancing the understanding and implementation of harmonized intellectual property laws and regulations among stakeholders and legal practitioners, entrepreneurs, and innovators. I think this is clear. Sorry, anyone speaking? Sorry. Okay. And then let's go to the next slide, where we'll be focusing on the private sector and its role in the intellectual property protection, because the private sector is the one that is going to trade anyway. The government is not the one that is going to trade. So the private sector must play a major role in the IP protection, and through investing in research and development. I think the private sector can foster innovation, create new intellectual property laws, and also contribute to the advancement of technology and industry within Nigeria and across Africa. And also, by the private sector engaging in the advocacy efforts, the private sector can push the establishment and enforcement of a robust intellectual property laws that safeguards our innovation and creation, fostering an environment that is conducive to promoting creativity and protecting intellectual property assets. The private sector must also collaborate with the government and engage with it to provide input and guidance on the development of policies, regulation, and enforcement strategies related to intellectual property, contributing to the creation of a supportive ecosystem for innovation and economic growth. And also, there is need for knowledge sharing and capacity building. The private sector, I think, as you know, can engage in knowledge sharing initiative, and he has been doing that, but rarely when it comes to intellectual property. But if it does so, it is going to enhance awareness and understanding of intellectual property rights among businesses, entrepreneurs, and other stakeholders, hence fostering a more intellectual property conscious environment in Nigeria and beyond. I think this takes us to the next slide. Since I've already talked about awareness that needs to be done by the private sector, but I also give the government also the role to play when it comes to awareness raising, because the government is a major actor in this. And then there is also need to raise awareness of the AfCFTA IP provision. And we need to utilize several channels, such as this one, that we are doing. I think you guys, you are doing a lot, and you are doing the most important thing when it comes to awareness raising, because by mentoring young people, I think that is the best thing we can do to disseminate information about the AfCFTA intellectual property provisions to a wider audience. We must also establish partnerships with industry associations, legal professionals, and academic institutions to organize workshops and training programs focused on intellectual property rights and the AfCFTA, ensuring targeted outreach and education. You know, academic institutions have been left behind when it comes to the AfCFTA. You know, you go to a Department of Economics and they don't even talk about the AfCFTA as a whole, not specifically to the intellectual property. You go to the Department of Law, you don't hear about the AfCFTA intellectual property protocol, but you hear about other like the WIPOs, the ARIPOs, the OHAPIs, and so forth. And something that is happening, they are not talking about it. They are talking about things that are historical, things that may be overwritten by the protocol on the intellectual property under the AfCFTA as it is modernized to meet the requirements or the needs of the African demographic dividend. There is also need to develop informational material such as pamphlets, brochures, and online resources to provide accessible and comprehensive information about the AfCFTA intellectual property provision to businesses and stakeholders. Have you ever seen a pamphlet that is specifically talking about the AfCFTA intellectual property protocol? I don't think so. People have not been talking about it. This is actually my first conversation with a lot of people talking about the IP laws. All I hear is when the AfCFTA is posting on its website, yeah, there were negotiations on the IP. There were this, the draft protocol has been approved by the head of states and so forth. But when it comes to the public, general public, which is going to utilize the AfCFTA, they know nothing. They haven't been involved in the negotiation, which is said. There is also need the establishment of specialized training programs and courses on IP rights under the AfCFTA within our educational institutions and different professional development initiative. For example, the African Trade Academy, it does some of these courses, and it is very interesting to see other public development institutions actually doing such important job. And also, we also need to, of course, in Nigeria, you also need to organize informational roadshows and forums to engage with businesses and stakeholders across different regions of your country and facilitate direct interaction and knowledge exchange on the AfCFTA IP provisions. It is rare to see the duty bearers and the rights owners interfaced together to talk about policy. So I think it is high time that we start interfacing these two so that the duty bearers go and make sure that they put or they negotiate in a way that is going to meet the requirement of the people, of the community, not what they think that we need. Let's go to the next or to the last slide. So in conclusion, I think that there is harmonizing the intellectual property laws and regulation within the AfCFTA is really crucial for fostering an environment that is conducive to innovation, creativity, and economic growth across Africa. The collaborative efforts between Nigeria and other AfCFTA member states are really essential for the success for harmonization and implementation of the IP protection measures under the AfCFTA. And we need a harmonized IP framework that will facilitate the movement of goods and services, enhance technology transfer, and encourage investment and trade within the African continent. And I also urge the private sector to actively take part in the promotion and the protection of IP in order to contribute significantly to the successful implementation of the AfCFTA IP protocol. And by linking or aligning, by aligning with the protocol's objective, I think Nigeria can position itself to benefit from the enhanced protection of its IP assets and drive economic development and innovation within its borders and beyond. The successful harmonization of IP laws and regulation will inevitably contribute to the creation of a more predictable and transparent environment for businesses operating within the AfCFTA. And then lastly, the effective implementation of the AfCFTA IP protocol will support the continent's broader goal of achieving sustainable economic development and regional integration. Hence, I think it is high time that the business get to know about the IP rights. Very few countries or companies, especially the small and medium enterprises, young people owned businesses, really know about intellectual property and how they can protect their ideas, their intellect. Hence, thank you so much for this opportunity where we get to teach young people to get to understand what the IP protocol is all about, because that is the major way that we can reach a wider audience and also help them to understand how this protocol is going to help them when it comes to protection, their innovation, creativity, as well as their cultures and their intellect. So thank you so much, and I hope to hear more from you as we continue with this dialogue.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful, detailed introduction into the topic for today. Thank you so much. Please, I want to see more engagement on our chat box from our mentees saying thank you, sir, thank you, ma, for that wonderful section from them both, covering on the topic for today, the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Our last two mentors are yet to join us. I think Mr. Leonard had to exit the call. So while we wait for them to join in, I would like to call on our mentees to also come and do their presentation on the topic for today. All right. We would like to have our mentees, Group 2, Intellectual Property Group. Please, we would like to have your presentation, so that 10 minutes presentation, so that you can share your research, what you've done with the whole class. And after that, we'll be taking our picture time, and then we'll go straight to question and answers. So while we head into the question and answer period, right, I would like to just encourage our mentees to make this session very interactive. I want to see a lot of questions on the chat box. Let's engage our mentors so that we can have them also give more insight as you ask questions. So group 2 presenter, please, you can come up and make your presentation. Can we have our Group 2 presenter?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
All right, welcome, Mary. Please, you can start sharing your screen and make your presentation. Please remember the time for presentation is 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My backup presenter, Fatima Jallo, will be sharing her screen and sharing the PowerPoint presentation.
All right.
Okay. Good day, everyone. Okay, let us wait for her.
All right, please, you can go ahead. Let me see if I can access your presentation and help you share.
All right. Thank you. Okay, I'll go on now. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to both the mentors and the mentees. I'm Ozamiri Ann, a member of Group 2, and I'm the presenter for this evening. I'm presenting on the topic, the impact of interactions between Nigerian IP laws with the AfCFTA IP protocol for positive growth of the creative industry. Now, what I'll be discussing would be Nigerian export issues, growth of the Nigerian creative industry, the need to regulate the Nigerian creative industry, how the AfCFTA would promote the growth of the Nigerian creative industry, the challenges in realizing this, strategies for enhancing the Nigerian competitiveness of the Nigerian creative industry, the scope and objectives of the IP protocol under the AfCFTA, provisions of the protocol that are relevant to Nigeria's IP law, conflict areas between the AfCFTA IP protocol and Nigeria's IP, AfCFTA IP protocol and creation, protection and enforcement of IP rights in Nigeria, as well as challenges for Nigeria's IP sector, the strategies for harmonizing, and also case studies of IP conflicts. All right, so basically, the Nigerian export issues, we are all aware that the major product that Nigerian exports are raw materials, cocoa and oil. And recent research has shown that while the oil is still providing export revenue, it's not really increasing or helping economically, while the Nigerian creative industry has been able to has increased Nigerians' revenue lately. The Nigerian creative industry is a rapidly growing sector of the economy and has the potential to generate significant export earnings. It aids Nigeria in so many ways by exposing Nigeria culture for better understanding, helping Nigeria to grow a positive image and development, basically, for the country. Now, there is need for the growth of the Nigerian creative industry as it is a potential export alternative. Now, the Nigerian creative industry has shown enormous potentials for growth. And it has given rise to new technology development, promoted content creative skill and development. Basically, we all know that the Nigerian creative industry has been growing enormously and rapidly. The Nollywood sector has gone global. The music industry itself is also has gone global. So it's important that the growth of this Nigerian creative industry is going to aid Nigeria in so many ways, as well as one of these ways is as regards export revenue. Now, there is need to regulate the Nigerian creative industry. The more growth means a better regulation, updating how the Nigerian creative industry is currently regulated. There is need to regulate it to maintain high standards, to create net policies and awareness, to create net protection for creativity, as we're now in a digital era, and there are lots of cyber crimes ongoing, lots of digital copyright infringement. There is need for the Nigerian creative industry regulations to be updated. Now, this is one of the ways where the AfCFTA comes in handy. It provides a bigger platform for Nigeria and African-based creatives. The role of the AfCFTA in promoting Nigerian creative industry. Now, the AfCFTA, as we have listened today, aims to provide broader and deeper economic integration across the continent, as well as attract investment, boost trade, provide better jobs, reduce poverty, and increase shared prosperity in Africa. It supports in promoting the Nigerian creative industry, harmonization of IP laws and policy agreements, and policy amongst other African countries, and promoting exports, which will lead to more certainty, stability, and confidence in the IP rights of their respective citizens. The AfCFTA will aid a market expansion and access to diverse audiences, cross-border collaboration and talent exchange, intellectual property protection and enforcement, boost to the film industry, promotion of creative services, increased visibility and influence to leverage on, enhanced cultural diplomacy, positive perceptions and connections with other African nations, job creations, economic diversification, and reduced dependency on traditional sectors. Now, as much as the AfCFTA has a lot to offer, there are challenges and obstacles to realizing creative IP exports with the AfCFTA. One of these is the poor infrastructure, the weak institution and law enforcement as regards IP laws, lack of access to sufficient funding of the creative industry, the non-tariff barriers, licensing complexities. All this hinders the growth of the Nigerian creative industry. It does not enable them grow, basically. Excuse me. These challenges have proven to be cog in the wheel and have stalled a speedy and full implementation of the agreement. Okay, some of the challenges that Nigeria is having basically is we have the international policies, the COVID-19 pandemic. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Nigeria closed its borders to other countries, and it's affecting free markets, trade markets, basically. Then we have the strategies for enhancing Nigeria's competitiveness in creative service industry. The Nigerian service sector consists of several industries such as banking, retail and wholesale trade, tourism, real estate, telecommunications, motion pictures, entertainment, education, and so many more. One of the strategies for enhancing Nigeria's competitiveness include improvement of market access for Nigerian exports, harmonizing export policies at all levels, reducing the cost of running business, investment of the Nigerian government in innovative sectors, reducing the bureaucratic hurdles impeding the creative traders, provisions of adequate infrastructure and connectivity across borders, providing enabling environments, such loans, in training and support for new businesses. Now, enforcing an effective IP structure in Nigeria requires overcoming several factors, which include weak legal framework. Nigeria IP laws are outdated and fragmented. But although we do have a recent Copyright Act, in inadequate enforcement capacity, the Nigerian Copyright Commission and other related relevant agencies lack the resources and expertise to effectively enforce IP rights across the country. And when there is no, when the citizens are not certain about the IP rights, being able to protect them, they will not be willing to put their products or their talent out there. High level of piracy and counterfeiting, corruption. Hence, to improve IP enforcement in Nigeria require revision of IP laws, increased funding for IP enforcement agencies, establishment of specialized IP courts, public awareness campaigns. Scope and objectives of the IP protocol under the AfCFTA. Now, the IP protocol reflects a shared commitment by state parties to protect and enforce intellectual property rights, balance intellectual property systems, and confirm the importance of IP to boosting intra-African trade. Provisions of the protocols that are relevant to Nigeria's IP law, we have Article 6 sub 1, which establishes the general principle of IP protection. Article 6 sub 2, which defines the scope of IP protection, covering trademarks, patents, industrial designs, and so on. Article 6 sub 3, which mandates member states to provide for the establishment of an IP registry or deposit system. Article 6 sub 4, which requires member states to establish a system for the enforcement of IP rights. Article 6 sub 5, which promotes the exchange of information and cooperation on IP matters among member states. Overall, the AfCFTA agreement presents both opportunities and challenges for Nigeria's IP law. While it provides a framework for harmonizing the economy and strengthening IP protection across the region, it also requires Nigeria to adapt its IP laws and practices to align with AfCFTA's provision. Conflict areas between the AfCFTA IP protocol and Nigeria's IP. Now, Nigeria, although is not a member of certain IP protocols such as African Regional Intellectual Property Organization, ARIPO, the OAP, African Intellectual Property Organization, they draw some of their intellectual property rights frameworks from these organizations, and some of them do not align and they contrast with the IP protocol of the AfCFTA. Now, the AfCFTA Intellectual Property Protocol seeks to promote the creation, protection, and enforcement of intellectual property rights throughout the African continent. It seeks to provide guidance on the enforcement of IP rights by courts and administrative authorities. It seeks to encourage parties to explore alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, outline specific measures for the settlement of intellectual property conflicts, set out remedies for infringement, provides for the establishment of a dispute resolution center, and also it recognizes the particularly sensitive nature of IP disputes and provides for dispute resolution mechanisms to be tailored to the particular circumstances of a dispute. The AfCFTA IP protocol opportunities or challenges for Nigerian IP sector. Although 44 out of 45 African countries have signed the pact and 36 African Union member states deposited their instrument of ratification, only Ghana, South Africa, and Egypt have met the custom requirements on infrastructure for trading. Therefore, they will be the only ones that will be able to fully implement the benefits that comes with the AfCFTA. Strategies for harmonizing Nigerian IP laws with the AfCFTA IP protocol. The IP landscape in Africa remains highly fragmented, marked by numerous initiatives and instruments at both regional and continental levels, which poses a significant hurdle to the effective implementation of the AfCFTA agenda, as already discussed. Now, to ensure African creators, entrepreneurs, and innovators fully capitalize on the creative potential of the creative economy on the continent, there needs to be an establishment of coordination and interagency mechanisms to oversee the harmonization process, to address challenges and ensure a cohesive approach. There needs to be a development of platforms to facilitate technology transfer and knowledge sharing among businesses and innovators within Nigeria and other AfCFTA member states. There needs to be an introduction of incentives for businesses that comply with the IP laws, ensure consistency in the enforcement procedures outlined in the IP laws by aligning them with the AfCFTA IP protocol. Foster collaboration with the private sector by involving industry associations, chambers of commerce, and business networks in the harmonization process, and also commitment to the timely integration, implementation, and enforcement of the AfCFTA decisions related to the intellectual property. Case studies of IP conflicts involving Nigeria and other AfCFTA member states. One example is the case of a Nigerian company, Innocent Motors, which accused the Chinese company Geely Automobile of copying its designs. Innocent Motors filed the complaint with the Nigerian Trade Ministry, alleging that Geely Automobiles was a copy of its Innocent G4 SUV. The ministry ruled in favor of Innocent Motors and ordered Geely Automobile to stop selling the TX3 in Nigeria. However, the Geely Automobile appealed the decision to Nigerian courts and the case is still ongoing. Another example is the case of a Nigerian musician, the band, who accused a Ugandan musician, Baby Cool, of copyright infringement. The band alleged that Baby Cool's song, Atulete, was a copy of his own song, Oliver Twist. Baby Cool denied the allegations, but the band filed a lawsuit against him in the Nigerian court. The case was eventually settled out of court. These cases illustrate the challenges of enforcing IP rights in Africa. In many African countries, IP laws are weak and there is a lack of enforcement mechanisms. This makes it difficult for companies and individuals to protect their IP rights. Okay, that is all for today. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you very much, Mary, for that presentation. Well done to Group 2 for compiling that presentation and putting in the effort to make sure that they were able to present today. So I would like to see reactions from our mentees saying well done to Mary Oza and the rest of the Group 2 team for making that Group 2 IP team for making that presentation. Thank you very much. All right, before we go into our mentors' comments on the presentation that was made, we would just like to take a brief picture time, 2 minutes picture time, so that we can have something to post as an evidence that you were present in class and you can share with others what you've learned in class. So please, we have our mentees turn on their videos so that we can take our picture time quickly. All right, please, can we all cooperate so that we can do that on time? Can we have more mentees? Thank you. All right, we are done with that. Thank you so much for cooperating. Thank you for turning on your video. All right, we'll be going straight to our mentors' comments. We would like to have Mr. Tanasiwa and Mrs. Omobola come and say a thing or two about the presentation that was made, give their in-depth observation into what they did, and also throw more light on the topic if they can, so that we can have more understanding into the topic for today. So we'd like to call on Ms. Omobola first to come and give her observation into the presentation that was made by Group 2. Thank you, Ma. Are you still with us?
Sorry, Dennis. Sorry, can I go after Tanatu? I'm trying to sort out something. I'll just go after him, if that's okay.
All right, no problem, Ma. It seems Mr. Tanasiwa is not with us, but I can see
he's not there. Okay, let me just quickly do a quick one. Okay, thank you for that presentation, Mary. But what I would just say is that when you're presenting, apart from, yes, you're trying to put in the content, then I think we should be looking at fonts, all this sort of slides. I think some of those, I noticed that, so it's something you should also put into consideration during when you're presenting. Then the information, it was detailed. There was obviously showed that you people did a lot of research, and I'll give you kudos for that. So what would I have to say? Maybe, I don't know if you were asked to specifically focus on the creative industry, because I noticed that was majorly what it is, but I know a lot of youths, we tend to focus on that area of creative data, but we should also take note that there are also some other areas that IP covers and that we should also be taking note of. And whenever we are thinking of IP, we should think outside of, yes, the creative industry. You can look at when I was doing my presentations, all the other the categories, areas, because I'm sure some of us, we are not just in the creative, some of us are looking at healthcare sector, some of us are looking at agriculture and all. So we also need to be looking at all this areas and carrying out our research. But generally, I think that was a fantastic picture. Just like I said, you had done some, when I said, I'm like, oh, you've already done some of my work anyway. So I'm not sure that I should be doing a lot, but well done. So that's just my comment that I'll just share with them. Thank you. And so, okay, yes, and of course, solutions. I noticed that, yes, you talked about a lot of the challenges that we had. So when we are doing presentation, pardon me if I did not notice solutions, but just to also bring that in the course of we talking about challenges, we should also be bringing out solutions as well. That's what we're like, okay, everybody, okay, we know that there are these challenges, but if this private sector talking about challenges, that this is what we want the government to do, we also need to let them know this is our position, this is what we think, this is what our recommendations that we think would help in the IP sector, the IP industry. Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Generally, well done.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that comment. I'm sure our mentees are taking observations. They're putting everything you said into consideration, and they will make that a part of their everyday presentation when next they are doing, when next they have to present. So we would like to have Mr. Tanasiwa, but we would like to have Mr. Tanasiwa, and then after that, I just noticed Mr. Leonard is also on the call. So when Mr. Tanasiwa is done with his observation of the presentation that was made by the mentees, we would like to have Mr. Leonard come up and also give us his own brief introduction, observation, and everything he can on today's topic. But before that, we'll be having Mr. Tanasiwa. Sir, please, can we have your observation and comments on the presentations that were made by the mentees?
Okay, thanks so much, Denny. So the presentation, this presentation, I think has been insightful, given its focus on the creative industry and how Nigerian IP and the AfCFTA are going to impact this positively. I think I can give just a few aspects that I've seen in the presentation. For example, firstly, I've just realized that there is a lot of research that was done and a comprehensive understanding of the Nigerian creative industry and its potential for growth. The presentation effectively highlights the opportunities and the challenges faced by the industry. Secondly, I think the recognition of there was the recognition of the need for policy harmonization within the African continent, particularly and or in the context of the African continental free trade area, is really crucial. And I think that is one of the points that was really emphasized. This demonstrates an awareness of the importance of aligning the IP laws to facilitate cross-border content distribution and trade. And then thirdly, I've also liked the fact that they've identified the challenges effectively. For example, insufficient training programs, limited access to technology, and a weak legal framework. And by acknowledging these challenges, it is very key for creating a realistic and effective strategy for industrial growth and also for industrial way of benefiting from from the AfCFTA IP protocol. But there are areas for improvement. For example, it will be very beneficial to include statistical data or case studies to support points made in the presentation. This would add credibility to the analysis and provide a clearer understanding of the current state of the Nigerian creative industry, as well as how it is already utilizing IP laws that are already there today. While the presentation outlines the general strategies for enhancing Nigeria's competitiveness and creative services trade, I think it is also going to be beneficial to provide specific and actionable recommendations for addressing the identified challenges. And then there is also a need to present potential solutions for the work legal framework, such as advocating for the modernization and consolidation of IP laws and enhancing collaboration between relevant agencies and the private sector. But overall, I think the presentation highlights the importance of the Nigerian creative industry and the challenges that it is facing. And by incorporating more specific recommendations and supporting data, the presentation can further strengthen its analysis and provide a more robust roadmap for the growth of the industry within the AfCFTA framework. So thank you so much, presenters, for such an insightful presentation. And I would really want to know more about the Nigerian creative sector.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tanatiwa, for that wonderful observation. I'm sure our mentees are taking everything into consideration moving forward. We would like to have, before moving to the question and answer segment, we would like to have Mr. Leonard Ubaji. Sir, if you're with us, we'd like you to also come and delve into today's topic and have your contributions into our topic for today, the AfCFTA, African Continental Free Trade Area. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. I must start by apologizing for my scattered schedule today. I've had to juggle a few conflicting engagements. I had mentioned that to the organizers last night, but that's fine. Well, for the moments I've listened into the conversations, I think I've had very interesting conversations and positions on the AfCFTA in general and on the IP protocol. I'll just make a few comments, and you permit me, because after those comments, I must run away again. Just to say that the AfCFTA as a regional trade agreement provides a comprehensive framework covering trading goods, trading services, intellectual property, competition, investment, and at the core of the provisions, they are mutually reinforcing. That means that if you don't understand the logic or the philosophy that underpins the agreement as a whole, you may struggle to understand its various elements. You may struggle to understand its various elements. So I recall that at the time when Nigeria had the argument or the debate, better put, about what should be our position concerning the AfCFTA and whether we should engage, whether it was good for Nigeria, whether it wasn't good for Nigeria. There were two sectors specifically that those of us who are pro the AfCFTA pointed out, as the sectors where Nigeria had the highest comparative advantage, if you want to put it that way. And that one of them was financial services and services generally, but the other one is in the creative industry. So we use the argument about the need for stronger intellectual property rights protection for for the Nigerian creative industry, which, as we know, has gone not just continental but also international. But at least at the continental level, we made a point that the Nigerian creative industry needs stronger intellectual property protection, so that the creatives will be able to reap the benefits of their creative work. And I'm happy the protocol on intellectual property rights has somewhat tried to cover this, not just about the creative, but also including elements of indigenous knowledge, and that. So the one critical point about one critical point about that is the fact that we need to build capacity. That's where that's going to be my last point. We need to build capacity to be able to implement the agreement as a whole, not just the intellectual property elements of it, but the agreement as a whole. And the kind of work Jiipcc is doing is the kind of work that feeds into that capacity building that we need to be able to implement the agreements. I think I'll just end it here. Thank you. I'll keep listening in, and if I need to, I can make further comments. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Leonard, for that wonderful introduction into the topic. We'll be moving straight into our question and answer segments. Mentees, this is the opportunity we have to, beyond just the background knowledge that we get from our mentors about the topic, this is the opportunity we have to go more deeper into the lines of the topics we address. So please, we would like to have questions from our mentees. I'm sure while writing your articles, while doing the research for the work, there were questions that came up that you want to ask our mentors, and I trust our mentors to do a good job in answering them. So please, we'll be taking live questions. Our mentees, please do well to indicate if you have a question. You can post on the chat box. You can indicate, you can send the question to me, and I'll read it out loud to our mentors to have them help us with it. So please, quickly, can we have questions? Can we have questions from our mentees? Quickly. All right, I can see Mr. Oluwabukumi, or Miss, sorry, if that be the case. Oluwabukumi, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Miss, by the way. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to ask our mentors, do you think, when I was researching, I found out that the AfCFTA has made a guided trade, guided GTI for about 96 goods. So I wanted to ask that in trying to get to a point of enforcement of intellectual property rights across Africa, or trying to use the agreement to enforce intellectual property rights across Africa, do you think that a guided trade agreement would kind of ease that process and make it like easier for more governments to be on board with it, more countries to be on board with the enforcement of IP rights and merging of them?
Thank you very much, Oluwabukumi, for that question. I'll be throwing the question openly to the mentors to see if any of them can share their opinion on the question that was asked by Oluwabukumi. So Mr. Leonard, Ms. Omobola, and Mr. Tanasiwa, does anyone have a contribution or an answer to that question?
We're coming now.
Okay, thank you so much for such an interesting question. So one thing that people must understand is that the AfCFTA Guided Trade Initiative is between 8 countries under the AfCFTA from the 5 regions of Africa. And it is a pilot phase to test and also to learn from the agreement, to see how effective the agreement is going to be, and also to test whether it is fit for countries to actually trade under or to fully implement the AfCFTA. So I think the IP law, since the protocol is already there, it is going to actually give it is going to help countries to get to understand how these IP laws are going to work under the AfCFTA as they are being implemented at this level, at this 8 countries level. So I think as a pilot study, it is going to also help other countries to see whether it works or it doesn't work. So it is very important to be there. It is very important for it to be there, because if it was not there, it may be very difficult for countries to actually trust the effectiveness of the AfCFTA. But since the GTI is ongoing and is working, I think it is something that is going to motivate more countries to what can I say, to put or to showcase their interest in becoming part of the next phase of this guided trade initiative, because it is going to come in phase and adopt countries as it grows, as it goes. So basically, I think it is a very important initiative that is going to benefit countries, and also to help countries to see whether the AfCFTA member states are committed to the intellectual property protocol, or they are not committed. So I think as we go, we are going to see more reports coming out on how the GTI has been operating, how these instruments, such as the protocol IP, have been utilized, and so forth, because it's already 1 year plus a month since it started operating. So we expect to see more and to understand more on how these protocols have been also incepted or been used or utilized by member states under the AfCFTA. So I think it is a very important initiative that is going to shed light to other member states, which may make them participate or not find interest or get to distrust the AfCFTA. So it will make a great impact on whether they participate or they distrust the agreement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tanasiwa, for that wonderful answer. I would also like to ask our mentors if Mrs. Omobola and Mr. Leonard, if there are more contributions to that questions, or we should just go straight to the next.
I think I just to clarify with Oluwabukumi, I'm guessing what she means by 96 good is the rules of origin that has been countries that participate, the state parties have agreed in respect of some. So rules of origins are basically the rules that determine if a product or goods will qualify for preferential treatment under the AfCFTA. So that's what I'm there. So just to correct that way, if that's what she means, and so of course that's not so guided trade initiative, just like Internatsu has explained, it's just like a test phase to test the functionality of the AfCFTA. And so of course the framework for IP, if it's going to be applied, we'll see how that goes. We'll get to know more information. And remember that I also said earlier that the annex on various IP categories are also currently being negotiated. So we'll get to know more information as the time goes by or as reports are being released. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you for that wonderful contribution. We'll be going to the next question. I can see Chidim raising his hand. Please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, everyone, and good evening, sir. My question is to Mrs. Omobola. Earlier this year, the Copyright Act, the amended Copyright Act was enacted. So I'd like to know, is the new Copyright Act compliant with AfCFTA's IP protocol?
Okay, thank you for that, Chimdi. Well, just like I had mentioned during my presentation, that states parties are meant to sort of come up with policies, kind of have a uniform policies for on IP rights protection across board. So whatever, I had mentioned negotiations are ongoing. And what, of course, and that's also part of that. When the new one comes, the parties are in the course of negotiation, they are meant to take into cognizance the national IP policies alongside the regional IP policies in the course of trying to come up with a framework for the under the AfCFTA. And definitely when that is released, we'll get to see, and I'm sure it's not going to be out of place. I'm not thinking it should be outside of majorly of what we have. Countries will basically share their own, everyone will exchange information on what their own IP policy. So with that, then we get to see, and if there are any some sort of inconsistencies, that's also there's already provision on how that will be addressed as well in the main AfCFTA agreement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. All right, thank you, Chidim, for asking that question. Thank you, Ma, for also answering. Please, we'd like to have more questions. Please, you can throw your questions to the chat box. I'm sure our mentors are more than ready to address them. Please, can we have more questions from our mentees? Can we have more questions? Okay. Chukuno, so please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chukuno, so I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you are very audible.
Okay, so my question is that, so with the AfCFTA agreement, does it mean that on IP protocol, so does it mean that individual countries will no longer retain their own IP laws, or can they still retain their own IP laws and still also have the IP protocol under the AfCFTA running concurrently? Like, let's say if dealing with a foreigner, then or within the free trade area, the AfCFTA IP protocol would apply. Then within the country, like within individuals in the country, then the country's IP law will apply. That's my question.
All right, thank you very much, also for that question. Does any of our mentors want to jump on that question? Ms. Omobola, Mr. Tanasiwa, Mr. Leonard, please, does anyone have an answer to the question that was asked by Chinonso?
I'm sorry. Could you also repeat the question, please? I was hoping someone would take it, sir.
Oh, all right. So Chinonso, please, can you go ahead and repeat the question?
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay, sir. So my question is this. And with the assuming the agreement, that's the IP protocol on the AfCFTA is actually becomes is working. So does it mean that Nigeria as a country will no longer retain their own IP law, or will it still apply side by side with the IP protocol under the AfCFTA?
Okay, thank you. That's why I'm talking about understanding the overall framework of the agreement. So what the AfCFTA seeks to do, and this cuts across the different elements of it, is to set rules that guide trade at the continental level. So it means, for example, if you're to trade with with South Africa, you're to trade with Kenya in Eastern Africa, with Mozambique in Southern Africa, you have the rules as laid out under the AfCFTA to guide those rules. That doesn't mean individual member states or state parties as they are now would give up their own domestic regulation in any field at all. But rather, what those rules at the continental level seek to do is to harmonize the approach. So, for example, the IP protocol sets minimum standards that countries would have to abide with. It doesn't mean that those countries would stop applying their own domestic legislation on those issues, but it simply means that they have an obligation to bring their domestic regulations on those matters in compliance with that of the AfCFTA. So if there are specific rights that are not protected in your country, and the AfCFTA has recognized those rights and accorded them protection. As a state party, you're supposed to modify your own domestic laws to bring those same rights, to become protected rights in your country. So the long and short of it is that there even in pure supranational settings, and I need to explain that. That is in settings where you have an international organization that has direct power, to make laws and make rules that are binding on countries and then adjudicate, like you have in the case of the EU. The member states do not lose entirely their legal and policy autonomy at the domestic level. It's just a question of how much you want to give to the center and how much you want to retain domestically. And indeed, the AfCFTA is by no means a supranational agency in that manner. So it is about cooperation, it's about harmonization, it's about minimum standard, and not about replacing national sovereignty at all. Yeah, that's the answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for. Okay, thank you for asking. Thank you, Chinonso, for asking that question, and thank you, Mr. Leonard, for also answering. Okay, there's a question in the chat box, and I'll be throwing the question to Mr. Tanasiwa to help us with it. The question is, how can the issue of jurisdiction be addressed when it arises, seeing the signatory countries have different legal systems? Okay, Mr. Tanasiwa is no longer with us. Please, Ms. Omobola, please, can you help us with that question, ma'am?
I think Mr. Leonard has sort of answered that question anyway. So saying that the AfCFTA, of course, you are not putting aside your domestic regulations. It's just a guide in respect of harmonizing and having some sort of uniformity in IP policies around under the AfCFTA. So the issue of jurisdiction does not, it doesn't affect you. It doesn't mean that your sovereignty is going to be eroded or you throw it aside. It's basically what are you, just like I said, what are you willing to cede up? How much are you willing to, how much are you willing to retain under your own policy? So that's what it is. When you have IP issues in a particular AfCFTA, that will be addressed within that country's jurisdiction or legal system. So that's that simple as it doesn't. The AfCFTA is not there to take away, to remove your national IP policies. They just like, let's harmonize the policies under the AfCFTA. Let's come together and let's ban when there are issues that need to be in respect of when there's a dispute or when there's a clash. How's that going to be addressed, really? So that's it. So you retain your country. Each country retains its jurisdiction. It doesn't mean that the AfCFTA is taking these powers off. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma, for that. I dare see any more questions, or can we call the section to a close? If there are more questions, please, we would like to take them now. Okay, in the absence of any question, we'll be wrapping up today's session, and I want to say a very big thank you to Ms. Omobola, Mr. Leonard, Mr. Tanasiwa in absentia, and Ms. Teniola also in absentia for volunteering to be here, sparing their time to share their knowledge on today's topic, the AfCFTA, and also giving us more insights in the question and answer segments and throwing more light to every question that has been asked. With this, I will say thank you also to our mentees for also being on call. Just a quick reminder that tomorrow is the closing ceremony for the fourth quarter of the mentorship program 2023. Thank you so much for following us through from week 1 up to week 7. We also want to use this opportunity to say, or to invite rather, our mentors that are currently on call to the closing ceremony. The time is 4 p.m. We'll be sending a message to our mentors so that they can also join us if they are free too. So thank you everyone for joining us for officially the last class of this quarter, and hope to see you all in the closing ceremony tomorrow. Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much, sir, for being here with us. Please do all have a lovely evening ahead. And with that, my name is Dennis Williams, and with that, good night.